Most people don't realize when it starts. There is no clear moment when you decide to live for approval. No single conversation where you consciously choose to impress others. It happens quietly, gradually, invisibly. A comment here, a reaction there, a smile you didn't mean, silence when you wanted to speak. Over time, these small moments shape something dangerous, a version of you that exists mainly to be accepted. You learn early that approval feels safe, that being liked feels like protection, that fitting in reduces risk. And so, without noticing, you begin to perform. You monitor your words. You rehearse conversations in your head. You worry about how you come across. You measure your worth through reactions. This is not weakness. This is conditioning. From childhood, society rewards compliance, likability, and performance. Good behavior is praised. Confidence is admired. Success is celebrated publicly. But what is rarely taught is how to exist without an audience. No one teaches you how to sit comfortably in your own skin without needing validation to confirm your value. And that is where the exhaustion begins. Because performance is tiring. Pretending is draining. Maintaining an image requires constant energy. You may not call it anxiety. You may not label it stress. But your body feels it. The tight chest before speaking your truth. The hesitation before setting a boundary. The urge to explain yourself even when you owe no explanation. These are not random feelings. They are symptoms of a life lived outward instead of inward. When your sense of worth depends on how others respond, you are never truly at rest. There is always another impression to manage, another expectation to meet, another standard to live up to. And the tragedy is this: the more you try to impress, the less free you become. Because approval is unstable. It changes with moods, contexts, and people. What earns praise today may bring criticism tomorrow. When your identity is built on external validation, your peace is fragile. This book is about breaking that cycle, not by rejecting society, not by isolating yourself, not by becoming cold or indifferent, but by shifting the center of authority back where it belongs, inside you. Freedom does not come from being admired. It comes from being self-directed. And the first step toward that freedom is understanding how deeply the need to impress has shaped your life. Most people believe they are being authentic, but authenticity cannot exist where fear is in control. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others. These fears don't shout, they whisper. They convince you to soften your opinions, to over-explain your choices, to prioritize harmony over honesty. You tell yourself it's politeness, maturity, adaptability, but often it's avoidance. Avoidance of discomfort, avoidance of conflict, avoidance of being misunderstood. And yet, misunderstanding is inevitable. No matter how carefully you perform, there will always be someone who disagrees, someone who judges, someone who projects their own insecurities onto you. Living to impress is a losing game because the rules constantly change. The moment you accept this, something powerful happens. You begin to question why you've been trying so hard, why you feel responsible for how others feel, why their approval carries so much weight, why disapproval feels personal. These questions are uncomfortable, but they are necessary, because you cannot let go of what you do not see. In this first part of the book, we will uncover how the need to impress is formed, why approval becomes addictive, how performance replaces authenticity, and why letting go feels so threatening at first. This is not about blaming others, parents, teachers, society, culture. It is about awareness. Once you see the mechanism, it loses its power over you. And slowly, quietly, you begin to breathe differently. Not because the world changed, but because you did. If you've ever asked yourself why certain situations trigger you so deeply, this part is for you. Most people believe their reactions are spontaneous. They think emotions simply happen. But reactions are not random. They are conditioned responses. Long before you consciously choose how to behave, your nervous system has already decided. This is why reactions feel uncontrollable, because they don't originate in logic. They originate in identity. Every emotional reaction is a defense, not always against danger, but against threat to the self-image. When someone criticizes you, interrupts you, ignores you, or questions your value, your mind doesn't hear the words first. It hears a message. You are not enough. You are not respected. You are not seen. You are not important. And the ego responds instantly. The ego's only job is protection, not truth, not growth, not peace. Protection. It protects the image you have built of yourself, especially when that image depends on external validation. This is why people who need approval react the strongest. Because when your worth is externally defined, every interaction becomes a threat. A raised eyebrow feels like rejection. Silence feels like dismissal. Disagreement feels like attack. You are not reacting to the moment. You are reacting to what the moment represents. This is where control is lost, not because you are weak, but because you are identified. Identified with opinions, identified with roles, identified with expectations. The ego says, if they don't approve of me, I disappear. And so it fights, it explains, it defends, it argues, it seeks reassurance, or it withdraws, shuts down, resents silently. Different strategies, same route, fear of losing value. But here is the uncomfortable truth. People who can provoke you can control you. If someone can make you angry on demand, they own your nervous system. If someone can make you insecure with a comment, they have access to your identity. This is why emotionally reactive people are easy to manipulate, not because they are unintelligent, but because their sense of self is unstable. Others sense this. Consciously or unconsciously, people test boundaries. They tease, they challenge, they provoke. When they see you react, they learn something important. This person is emotionally available. That availability becomes leverage. This is how reactions are used against you. A colleague pushes your buttons to assert dominance. A partner triggers guilt to maintain control. A family member provokes to reaffirm old roles. And every time you react, the pattern reinforces itself. You think you are standing up for yourself, but often, you are just feeding the cycle. True strength is not louder reaction. It is non-reactivity. Non-reactivity is not suppression. It is sovereignty. It means your emotional state does not depend on other people's behavior. This is deeply threatening to the ego, because the ego survives through comparison and response. When you stop reacting, the ego feels exposed. It tells you, they will think you are weak. They will walk over you. You must respond. But silence is not submission. Silence is clarity. When you don't react immediately, you create space. And in that space, awareness returns. You begin to notice which situations trigger you, which words carry emotional charge, which people consistently destabilize you. These are your hidden triggers. Triggers are not flaws. They are signals. They show you where your identity is still fragile. If criticism hurts deeply, you are attached to being seen as competent. If rejection devastates you, you are attached to being chosen. If disrespect enrages you, you are attached to being dominant or validated. Awareness of triggers is power, because what is conscious can be regulated. This is why emotional mastery starts with observation, not control. You don't eliminate reactions by forcing calm. You dissolve them by understanding their origin. Ask yourself, what exactly feels threatened right now? What image of myself is being challenged? Why does this matter so much? These questions interrupt the automatic loop. They shift you from reaction to response. Response is deliberate. Reaction is reflexive. The goal is not emotional numbness. The goal is emotional ownership. When you own your reactions, others lose access to your inner world. They may still speak. They may still judge. They may still misunderstand. But they no longer decide how you feel. This is where true freedom begins, not in changing others, but in removing their authority over your emotional state. In the next part, we will go deeper into how to dissolve the need for validation, how to build internal authority, how to set boundaries without guilt, and how to live without performing for approval. If this part resonated with you, pause for a moment. Reflect on one situation where you usually react, and ask yourself, what would change if I didn't? At some point in your life, you learned that being accepted meant being safe. As a child, approval was survival. Attention meant care. Disapproval meant risk. This wiring never fully disappears. It evolves. As adults, we no longer depend on approval to survive physically, but emotionally the pattern remains. We seek validation in subtler ways, through productivity, through politeness, through success, through being liked, through being useful, through being impressive. And without noticing, life becomes a performance. You start adjusting your tone, your opinions soften, your boundaries blur, your truth becomes negotiable. Not because you are dishonest, but because you want to belong. The problem is not wanting connection. The problem is trading authenticity for acceptance. When approval becomes a requirement, your inner compass breaks. You stop asking, "What do I respect?" and start asking, "What will they think?" This is how people lose themselves quietly, not in dramatic collapse, but in small daily compromises. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay silent when something feels wrong. You over-explain to justify your choices. You apologize for existing. And slowly, resentment builds. Not toward others, but toward yourself. Because deep down, you know you are not being honest. The need to impress is exhausting. It keeps your nervous system alert, always scanning for feedback. Approval becomes a drug. A compliment lifts you temporarily. A criticism destabilizes you completely. This emotional volatility is not sensitivity. It is dependency. True confidence is not believing you are impressive. It is knowing you don't need to be. Detachment from approval does not mean isolation. It means internal authority. Internal authority is the ability to say, "I respect my own judgment." When you trust yourself, external opinions lose their grip. They can still inform you, but they no longer define you. This shift is uncomfortable at first. When you stop performing, some people will be confused. They are used to a version of you that was predictable, agreeable, and responsive. When that version disappears, they may push harder. They may guilt you, question you, test you. Not because you changed for the worse, but because the dynamic changed. This is where most people retreat. They return to old behaviors to restore familiarity. But growth requires tolerating discomfort. You must be willing to disappoint others to remain honest with yourself. This does not make you selfish. It makes you aligned. Alignment is calm. When your actions match your values, the mind settles. You no longer rehearse conversations in your head. You no longer replay interactions. You no longer wonder if you said the right thing, because you spoke from truth, not strategy. Letting go of approval begins with boundaries. Not aggressive boundaries, clear boundaries. Boundaries are not walls, they are definitions. They say, "This is where I end. This is what I accept. This is what I do not negotiate." A boundary does not require explanation. Explanation invites debate. Debate invites manipulation. Clarity is enough. You don't need to justify your pace, your preferences, your values. People who respect you will adapt. People who relied on your compliance will resist. Both reactions are information. Another key to detachment is reducing emotional overexposure. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Sharing is powerful when it is intentional, dangerous when it is compulsive. Oversharing is often a request for validation. When you speak less about yourself, you regain emotional leverage. Silence protects clarity. It gives you time to process before reacting, before explaining, before committing. This is not emotional withdrawal. It is emotional discipline. As you detach from approval, something unexpected happens. Your presence changes. You speak slower, you listen deeper, you react less. People sense stability, and stability commands respect without demanding it. You no longer need to convince, you no longer need to impress. You simply exist as you are, and that is enough. In the final part, we will explore how to live without performing, how to respond instead of react, how to maintain calm under pressure, and how to build a life rooted in self-respect, not validation. Before moving on, ask yourself, in which area of my life am I still performing? And what would happen if I stopped? There comes a moment in this journey where something quietly shifts. You stop asking how to be seen and start asking how to be aligned. This is where living without the mask begins. For most of your life, the mask felt necessary. It helped you adapt. It helped you belong. It helped you survive social expectations. But what once protected you eventually started suffocating you. Living without the mask does not mean exposing everything. It does not mean oversharing. It does not mean rebelling against the world. It means no longer shaping yourself around fear. Fear of rejection, fear of misunderstanding, fear of not being enough. When you remove the mask, you don't become louder. You become clearer. You stop reacting emotionally to every opinion. You stop defending your worth. You stop explaining yourself unnecessarily, not because you don't care, but because you care about the right things. One of the biggest myths about authenticity is that it requires confrontation. It doesn't. Authenticity is often quiet. It shows up in what you tolerate, in what you walk away from, in what you no longer chase. Living without the mask means you no longer chase validation from people who cannot offer understanding. You stop needing agreement. You stop needing applause. You stop needing permission. And in that absence, peace appears. This stage is uncomfortable for the ego. The ego wants recognition. It wants to be seen. It wants proof. But proof is a trap. The more you try to prove yourself, the more you reinforce doubt. People who are at peace do not explain their value. They live it. When you live without the mask, you become selective. Selective with your energy. Selective with your words. Selective with your commitments. You no longer feel obligated to respond to everything. You no longer feel responsible for other people's emotions. This does not make you cold, it makes you grounded. A grounded person does not need to convince. They do not rush to fill silence. They do not react impulsively. They pause. That pause is power. In that pause, you decide instead of react. You choose instead of comply. This is where emotional maturity is born. Another important shift happens here. You stop confusing being liked with being respected. Being liked often requires performance. Being respected requires consistency. When you stop performing, some people will like you less, but the people who matter will trust you more. Respect is built through alignment, not approval. Your words match your actions. Your boundaries remain stable. Your behavior is predictable because it is honest. This creates safety, not just for others, but for yourself. You no longer wake up wondering who you need to be today. You are already yourself. Living without the mask also means allowing discomfort. Not every moment will feel smooth. Not every interaction will feel validated. But discomfort is not danger. It is simply unfamiliarity. Your nervous system is learning a new pattern. Existence without performance. At first, silence may feel awkward. Not explaining may feel rude. Saying no may feel selfish. These feelings are echoes of old conditioning. They fade with practice. As you continue living without the mask, your mind becomes quieter. Not because life is perfect, but because internal conflict decreases. You are no longer arguing with yourself. You are no longer betraying your instincts to maintain acceptance. That inner alignment creates calm. This is where confidence becomes natural. Not loud confidence, not dominant confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that does not announce itself. The kind that does not seek attention. The kind that remains steady under pressure. Quiet confidence is the byproduct of self-respect, and self-respect is built through consistent self-honesty. Every time you choose truth over approval, you reinforce trust with yourself. Every time you honor a boundary, you strengthen inner authority. Every time you stop performing, you reclaim energy. This is freedom. Not freedom from people, but freedom from needing them to define you. In the final part, we will bring everything together. We will explore how to maintain this state long-term, how to handle setbacks without self-judgment, how to build a life rooted in inner freedom, and how to move forward without returning to old patterns. Before continuing, pause for a moment. Ask yourself honestly, what mask am I still wearing? And what would happen if I finally put it down? There is a different kind of confidence that emerges when you no longer live for approval. It is not loud. It does not demand attention. It does not need to be reinforced. It is quiet. Quiet confidence is the result of alignment, not achievement. It comes from knowing who you are and no longer negotiating that truth to be accepted. At this stage, something important has changed. You no longer ask yourself how to be impressive. You ask yourself how to be honest. You no longer chase certainty from others. You cultivate clarity within. This is inner freedom. Inner freedom does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes clear. Challenges still exist. Criticism still appears. Misunderstandings still happen. But they no longer shake your foundation, because your foundation is internal. You understand now that other people's reactions are reflections of their own inner worlds. Their approval is not proof of your worth. Their disapproval is not evidence of your failure. You stop personalizing what was never about you. This shift alone dissolves enormous amounts of anxiety. Most mental noise comes from resistance, from trying to control perception, from managing impressions. When that effort ends, the mind rests. You no longer rehearse conversations. You no longer replay moments. You no longer imagine alternate versions of yourself that would have been more acceptable. You live once, fully, as you are. This does not make you rigid. It makes you stable. Stability allows flexibility without self-betrayal. You can adapt without disappearing. You can compromise without losing yourself. You can listen without absorbing everything. You learn to hold opinions lightly and values firmly. This balance is maturity. One of the most important practices at this stage is consistency. Not consistency for productivity, consistency for integrity. Doing what you said you would do, honoring your limits, speaking when it matters, remaining silent when explanation is unnecessary. These small acts compound. They create trust with yourself. And self-trust is the core of quiet confidence. When you trust yourself, you no longer need reassurance. You stop asking others to confirm your decisions. You stop seeking permission to live at your pace. You become self-directed. This is the freedom most people seek without knowing how to name it. Freedom is not unlimited choice. It is internal coherence. When your actions align with your values, the mind stops fighting itself. There is no inner debate. No constant second-guessing. Peace becomes the default state, not something you chase. This does not mean you never doubt. It means doubt no longer controls you. You acknowledge uncertainty without letting it dictate your behavior. You move forward anyway. Another essential part of inner freedom is allowing others to misunderstand you, not correcting every assumption, not defending every decision, not explaining every silence. Understanding is a gift, not a requirement. Those who truly see you do not need excessive explanation. Those who don't never will. Letting go of this need frees immense energy, energy that returns to creativity, to focus, to presence. You become more available to life itself, not to managing how life looks. This is where meaning deepens. Moments feel fuller. Silence feels supportive. Solitude feels nourishing instead of lonely. You are no longer escaping yourself. You are at home. There may still be moments when old patterns try to return. Moments when approval feels tempting. When performance feels safer. This is normal. Growth is not linear. Awareness is the anchor. When you notice the urge to impress, pause. Ask yourself, what am I trying to protect right now? Usually the answer is fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of being unseen. Meet that fear with presence. not judgment. You don't need to eliminate it. You need to outgrow it. And you already are. Because every time you choose truth over approval, you reinforce your freedom. Every time you remain calm under pressure, you strengthen your nervous system. Every time you stop performing, you return to yourself. This is the path, not toward perfection, not toward admiration, but toward peace. And peace, once established, becomes unshakable. You don't need to impress anyone to live a meaningful life. You need clarity, integrity, and the courage to remain yourself even when it would be easier to perform. That is real success. If this audiobook resonated with you, take a moment to reflect. What changed in the way you see yourself? And if you want to continue this journey, subscribe for more long-form audiobooks focused on self-mastery, emotional control, and mental clarity. In the comments, write, "I choose inner freedom," and carry this understanding with you, quietly, confidently, fully,